It's midday here at Channels Television's global headquarters in Lagos. Hello and welcome wherever you're watching from. This is Lunchtime Politics. I am Bukola Koka. Our top stories. Presidential Election Petition Court continues hearing, reserves judgment in the petition by the Allied People's Movement against the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress and President Bola Tinubu. Court dismisses case against former Imo State Governor Senator Okorocha, describes case as an abuse of judicial court process. And we'll take a closer look at the president's declaration of a state of emergency on food security. Thank you again for joining us. The Presidential Election Petition Court, PPC, has reserved judgment in the petition by the Allied People's Movement, APM. The APM is seeking the nullification of Tinubu's election on the grounds that his running mate, Kashim Shettima, was not qualified to contest, having allegedly engaged in double nomination. After parties adopted their final written addresses, the chairman of the panel, Justice Haruna Samani, announced that judgment was reserved until a date to be communicated to parties. Justice Samani added that the court plans to deliver judgment in the petition by the APM the same day with those of the People's Democratic Party and the Labour Party. Respondents in the petition are the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, the APC, Tinubu, Shettima, and Kabir Masari, who acted as APC's placeholder before Shettima's nomination. A federal Capital Territory High Court has dismissed the case against the former governor of Imo State, Senator Okorocha, by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC. The court described the EFCC's charges of fraud and abuse of office leveled against him as an abuse of judicial process. In his ruling, Justice Yusuf Halilu premised his judgment on the fact that the EFCC had filed a similar charge against the former Imo State governor at the Federal High Court in December 2022, to which the case was decided in favor of the former governor. Justice Yusuf Halilu noted that an order made by a court of competent jurisdiction is valid until it is set aside, adding that the EFCC should have appealed the judgment of the Federal High Court as the pronouncement made by the judges remains law. However, this will be the third judgment that will be delivered by a court of competent jurisdiction on the charges of fraud filed by the EFCC against the former governor. And staying with the court, hours after the order by the Federal Capital Territory High Court, the DSS says it has charged Mr. Emefiele to court. The spokesperson of the DSS, Mr. Peter Afanaya, in a statement explained that the service had in 2022 applied for a court order to detain the suspended CBN governor, Godwin Emefiele, in respect of a criminal investigation. He further explained that Mr. Emefiele, having obtained a restraining order from an FCT High Court, the service arrested him in June 2023 on the strength of suspected fresh criminal infractions, one of which forms the basis for his current prosecution. Mr. Afanaya is giving the assurance of professionalism, justice, and fairness in handling the matter. Enough is enough. I will recover Nigeria from vested interests. We're taking our country back. These declarations are coming from the president, who appears not to be mincing words in his resolve to change the course of the nation's fortunes. President Bola Tinubu was speaking when he met with the women leaders of the All Progressives Congress in the 36 states of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory, led by the APC National Woman Leader, Dr. Betta Edu. Our State House correspondent, Gloria Umezuki, reports.
The question of security is paramount in my mind. We're back to discuss that over and over again, because women are the high victim of insecurity anywhere in the world, particularly in Nigeria. We have to pay attention to that. You are going through the brunt of the fuel subsidy. I know the pressure and the demand and lamentation, but you understand it much better. You are a better coordinator of things and values than any other species in humanity. You are the one who can multitask easily, watch TV, hold conversation, newsletter, and feed the child. No man can do that except through motion. And you are the one who understands the labor pain. That is only after that pain you see the smile of a child that you are relieved and forget the pain completely. And that's what we are going through economically. You are the one who can educate better the public to understand that we have to go through this. Cartel and thieves have been raping us and fleecing this country before now. We say enough is enough.
And there are more tough words from the president. This time, he has declared a state of emergency on food security. According to the special advisor to the president on special duties, communication, and strategy, Mr. Dele Alake, the president made the declaration after a meeting he had with stakeholders on agriculture and food production value chain.
In line with this administration's position on ensuring that the most vulnerable are supported, the president has declared with immediate effect the following actions. 1, a state of emergency on food security. 2, that all matters pertaining to food and water availability and affordability as essential livelihood items be included within the purview of the National Security Council. Now, as a direct and immediate response to this crisis, a number of initiatives will be deployed in the coming weeks to reverse this inflationary trend and guarantee future uninterrupted supplies of affordable foods to ordinary Nigerians. We will immediately release fertilizers and grains to farmers and households to mitigate the effects of the subsidy removal. 2, there will be an urgent synergy between the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Water Resources to ensure adequate irrigation of farmlands and to guarantee that food is produced all year round. We will establish ranches in collaboration with state governments, and the federal government will pay for the land.
And we're now joined by Mr. Sadiq Kasim, who is the president of the Fertilizer Producers and Suppliers Association of Nigeria and an executive of the Nigeria Agribusiness Group. Mr. Kasim, we're glad you could join us this afternoon. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
So I'm sure that there are quite a number of initiatives that would excite your community, from this announcement. We could talk about the distribution of fertilizer, the distribution of grains to farmers and households, the decision to pay for land by the federal government, just to mention a few. How is your community receiving this? And perhaps what are your other thoughts, immediate thoughts on this?
Okay, first of all, I would like to thank the federal government for doing what we have always wanted. Food security is actually national security. It's an affair that must be tackled at the top level and must be handled very well. Secondly, we believe that, yes, the federal government has finally looked at us What I want to say here is that earlier on, decisions and actions are being brought out rapidly, but nothing has come down to touch on farmers and the grassroots until this moment and until yesterday. So we thank the president for that, and we look forward to the implementation. What has been ruled out yesterday largely were policy decisions. There is a need to involve everybody, every stakeholder in this case, in the final implementation so that the results will be seen as soon as possible. We would want the president's 100 days to be remarkable, not just for the international community who have asked for removal of fuel subsidy, harmonization of the exchange rate, but also for the masses to feel the presence of Mr. President and his actions.
Now, part of the initiatives announced under the declaration of state of emergency is that security architecture will protect the farms and the farmers. Should we take it for granted that this has been well thought out since it's going to be implemented under the National Security Council? Or what, in your own opinion, how should the resources be distributed in terms of the areas where security protection for farmers is most needed in certain parts of Nigeria?
Yes, we understand a lot of farmlands have been deserted and abandoned by farmers, especially in those areas where particularly grains are being produced. These grains are spread around for and used for feed and food. We have experienced a shortage of production of grains because of this situation. We've always known that there has been a policy and an initiative by government to deploy agro rangers, but it has never come to fruition. This is going to now be put in place. We would want to see how the implementation would go. The federal government, by the way, in the pronouncement yesterday, has also told us that there is 500,000 hectares of land that has been cleared and ready for cultivation. So we would want to start seeing this security architecture deployed to those 500,000 hectares first. Let us see how it happens, because we need to onboard new farmers, new people who would be interested in continuing with farming, who have found agriculture to be profitable and a business.
Now, one of the key things that was also said by the special advisor was that the federal government is no longer comfortable with a downtime in farming, that they don't want seasonal farming anymore. While this is, worthy of note, but what about the concern about post-agricultural losses, harvesting losses? How can the federal government deploy technology to check post-harvest losses?
Okay, first of all, we are very glad that finally Nigeria is realizing that we need to start multiple cropping seasons. There has been reports, for instance, wherein it was discovered that Nigeria could produce rice in 3 cycles. And every one of us knows that rice has become a staple in this country. And yesterday, during the meeting, the Federal Ministry of Water Resources told us that they have about 1,300,000 hectares available for irrigation, yet only about 170,000 is being utilized. But the issue is, 1, the issue of security, 2, the issue of how you reach out to those people who would utilize this irrigation land. All along, government has always been in charge. Government has always owned the river basins and the Fadama lands and the irrigation canals, which is not the right thing. We would want a situation where farmers farmer groups, businesses who would want to do this are invited to come and open up these lands, and then we go into it. If we are able to produce 4 tons per hectare on average for rice, and we do it twice a year, that immediately doubles the production. And that would now ease the price of rice that we find today, where there is not so much paddy to process. And that's why all the processing companies are chasing the little paddy that is in the market. And so the powers of demand and supply makes the price of paddy high. And so the price of finished rice also very high. But as we double the production of paddy, what would happen is that you find that there would be an equilibrium from the powers of economics, so that price of paddy comes down, price of finished rice comes down. And it doesn't also necessarily mean the farmer is going to lose, because as it is today, it's not the farmer that benefits most by the high cost of paddy. It's actually the middleman who buys it off from the farmer at a normal rate and then hoards it and waits until the desperate processor comes to him, and he's now the one who fixes the price he wants to sell his paddy.
And just as a quick follow-up to that, the CBN has warned that those withholding grains should, distribute them, as the price of grains will drop following the plan to distribute grains to farmers and fertilizers. This is related to the concern about high food inflation. What are the immediate gains, the low-hanging fruits, from this planned distribution, particularly after implementation commences and we witness harvest from the first harvesting season, after implementation?
Yeah, really, for us, we believe that both the CBN and the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, under its Strategic Grains Reserve, do not have so much grains in their custody to release to meet up with the demand. For instance, if you look at the poultry industry, in the last 3-4 days, or let's even say in the last 1 week, the price of maize has gone so high that birds would soon start dying because there's no food. That's the poultry industry would suffer because there's no food to feed the chicken. And then what happens is the price of eggs will go up. If the CBN and the Federal Ministry of Agri want to really help, let them bring out their stocks and target specific sectors. Specific, when I mean here is, for instance, target the poultry industry, the feed mills around, supply to them so that they live, or rather they have something that is affordable. And then also, except if the federal government is going to give it out free, or the CBN is going to give it out at a cost-effective rate, it's probably not going to change much. Yes, I agree, those who have bought and hoarded would now start re-strategizing, knowing fully well what they have in stock is larger than what the federal government and the CBN combined have in stock. So they will just allow them to work maybe for a couple of weeks, maximum a month, and then they will still come back to the market. So we need to have some very maybe direct things. I'm not saying that we would want federal government to be involved in price fixing or price control mechanisms, but then look at it from a more long-term thing. What is wrong with Nigeria having a minimum support pricing mechanism? Since we are going to have a commodities board system that is going to be brought back, then alongside that commodities board, let's have a price support mechanism that would be used. Under this mechanism, the cost of production plus a margin for the farmer, such that the farmer would always be encouraged to go and produce. And then the government now gets into the market as a last resort, what they call the buyer of last resort. And whenever there is a situation where the stocks are depleted and the prices are going higher because of the actions of some players, government releases its stocks. But then, like the president's remark says, the directive, food is now going to be a security item. So if it is a security item, then we must strategize, we must buy food and keep it. Today, what is our food stock held by government? Probably not much.
You know, Mr. Kosim, our conversations reveal that, you know, it's easier on paper, but there's a lot of work to be done in practice, you know, to galvanize agriculture and indeed the entire value chain in the country. But we must thank you very much. There are more dimensions to the subject. Mr. Kasim Sadiq is the president of the Fertilizer Producers and Suppliers Association of Nigeria and also an executive of the Nigeria Agribusiness Group. Thank you very much for your time and contribution on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Welcome back. Ahead of the 2023 governorship election in Kogi State, the Nigeria Police Force has cautioned political actors in the state against electoral violence, ballot box snatching, warning that the force will not hesitate to arrest offenders. The Assistant Inspector General of Police in charge of Zone 2, Mr. Babatunde Ishola, stated this in Lokoja, the capital of the state, during a stakeholders meeting on peace and security. He also urged politicians to have positive attitudinal change to guarantee peaceful, free and fair conduct of the election.
The sound of the beagle welcomes the Assistant Inspector General of Police to the Nigeria Police Zonal Headquarters in Lokoja for the meeting on election security. The theme is strengthening community engagement towards a violence-free November 2023 governorship election in Kogi State. And present in the hall are traditional rulers, politicians, and members of civil society. The Commissioner of Police, Akeem Yusuf, explains the need for unity and respect for law and order by all, irrespective of political and religious differences.
As party leaders, you need to talk to your supporters. As you leaders who are in the majority and therefore need to say no to violence. As royal fathers, you need to talk to our subjects. As religious leader, we need to talk to our followers.
Taking it further, AIG Babatunde Ishola warns that anyone who engages in electoral violence and is caught will be made to face the wrath of the law.
The police will not allow any form of thuggery that will now try to derail the peaceful conduct of the election. Everybody should vote according to their choice.
For the National Electoral Commission, everything is in place to ensure peaceful and transparent conduct of the election. But one of the participants, traditional ruler of Tawari community in Kogi State, is skeptical about security arrangements so far put in place.
As for INEC, we have so far started preparations. You would also be aware that the final list of candidates for all the political parties that are contesting in November have been published.
I want the Commissioner of Police to please, if you are going to ask for more policemen in police headquarters in Abuja, if you have problem, I will help you. Because I will meet the IG and tell him this problem the police people are having in Kogi. They need to be helped.
This meeting of politicians, religious, traditional rulers, and the police will help all concerned to appreciate the importance of having peaceful election, which the electoral body INEC has assured will be a smooth process.
And staying with the National Assembly, the Senate has confirmed the appointment of the country's new service chiefs after their screening by the upper legislative chamber. The exercise, which lasted for nearly 2.5 hours, was held behind closed doors. Our National Assembly correspondent, Linda Akibe, reports.
Although there was no announcement that the exercise was to hold on Thursday, there were indications before plenary started. President Bola Tinubu had written to the Senate requesting that the upper chamber confirm the nomination of the service chiefs. After senators are seated, the majority leader requests that the Senate allow the service chiefs enter the chamber. Once settled inside the chamber, the heads of the nation's armed forces introduce themselves and briefly highlight areas of focus to improve security in the country. Starting with the Chief of Defense Staff.
Under my watch, the armed forces shall continue to serve the Nigerian people dutifully and in line with the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and other extant provisions of the laws of the Federation.
Next was the Chief of Army Staff.
The volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous nature of our contemporary security environment makes leadership challenging and therefore demands new skills that are proactive, adaptive, and inclusive.
When he was done, the new Chief of Naval Staff stepped up.
In line with our statutory roles, which is the defense of the nation's territorial integrity from the maritime domain, as well as the policing roles of protecting the nation's resources and contributing to military aid to civil power, I am fully prepared to carry out these roles.
And finally is the Chief of Air Staff.
It is therefore imperative that we devise strategies to leverage on our strengths and enhance operational output.
Done with a brief introduction, the Senate goes into a closed-door session for the screening proper. The security nature of the questions to be asked is a reason often given for screening service chiefs privately. Nearly 2 hours, 30 minutes later, the screening ends and the Senate President discloses the decision of the House.
The Senate thereafter approved the nominations of the following persons as Chief of Defense Staff and Service Chiefs for the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Is this a true reflection of what transpired in the Committee of the Whole?
Some Nigerians see the screening of service chiefs as a mere formality because the National Assembly has at no time rejected any president's request to confirm the heads of the military.
And you have been served on today's edition of Lunchtime Politics, and indeed for the entire week. Join us again, same time next week. I am Bukola Koka. Bye for now.